Goldie and Loach, a fish tale. Story and illustrations by Shannon Treier, read by Henrike Oesterheld Treier. Once there was a beautiful little goldfish. She lived in a nice clean bowl with a sparkling pebble floor. She had half of a giant hard cockle shell buried on its side in the pebbles to sleep under when she felt tired. A friendly face greeted her every morning and every evening. She called him Smiley Face because he was always happy when he saw her. At times, she would focus beyond the water of her bowl and look at the soft green walls with the pictures and drawings of birds, airplanes, and portraits of her and furry monster. She loved to watch Smiley Face draw. She also loved to watch the sun move across the room throughout the day. She enjoyed swimming leisurely around her bowl. Sometimes she'd swim fast in tight circles, then fan her fins out to feel the cool water lift her scales, then shimmy through to the tips as she unfurled her tail. Other times, she swam in wide circles to create whirlpools, which she floated down the vortex to the pebbles below. When her water became cloudy, Smiley Face would clean the bowl for her. This was a very anxious time, for she would be moved to a smaller bowl, and for a moment, during the transition, she had to hold her breath. Smiley Face was ever so gentle as he moved her from one place to the next. After a while, she didn't mind so much, because the end result was a glistening bath, sparkling pebbles, and clean breathing water. She loved her life now. How very different it was from where she began, constantly moving from one fairground to another. But she had Smiley Face, and that made all the difference. The night water cooled as the evening shadows crept into the room, and by morning the water slowly warmed as the sun peeked through the window. Soon, Smiley Face would be moving about hurriedly. Before long, he would slow down and come to say, "Hello." She loved seeing Smiley Face, and she showed him by rapidly moving her pectoral fins in a figure 8. His hair was always disheveled. It was light brown with streaks of bright yellow running across it in the morning sun. He had warm, chocolate brown eyes that grinned at her through the water. His mouth was always smiling, and sometimes she could see his porcelain white teeth. After he said hello, he would talk to her for a while, usually telling her about what he was going to do that day, and he always mentioned how pretty she was. This would send her into tight twirls of delight, so she could show off her beautiful fins. He would giggle and then sprinkle a few flakes of food in her bowl before he hurried out of the room. This is how her days began. Sometimes Goldie would be visited by Furry Monster. She was striped with grey, black and white fur. Furry Monster had big emerald eyes that widened to black when she caught a glimpse of Goldie. At times, Furry Monster would spend all afternoon curled up on Smiley Face's bed. She seemed to enjoy sleeping on the sunny spots on the comforter. When Smiley Face would draw, she liked to roll on her back right next to him, occasionally swatting at his pencil. Other times, she would focus on Goldie, watching her every move, eyes widened to black, her nose flat against the side of the bowl. One time, Furry Monster even had the courage to stick her hairy paw in the water. After patting her paw around for a while, she changed her mind and pulled it back. Clearly, she did not like how the water felt on her furry paws and pink toes. On these rare occasions when Furry Monster was so interested in Goldie, Goldie would retreat to her half shell and wait for Furry Monster to get bored. Goldie loved her life, and she lived this way for a long time in goldfish years. After the newness had worn off and she'd become accustomed to her routine, She started to think what it would be like to have a companion. I would have so much fun if I had someone to share this with, she thought. How she longed for a friend to swim with in her dazzling pool. She slunk under her pearly shell and sulked for days. Even the pebbles became dull and lost their luster. Smiley Face noticed. Then one day, Smiley Face dipped a clear bag into her water. It was a bag similar to the one she was in when she first came to her new home. Inside was a black and orange fish. She was beside herself with joy. "Oh, a new friend!" she exclaimed. Goldie swam around the clear plastic separating her from her new companion. The striped fish never moved except to breathe and move his eyes to watch Goldie swim about him. "He's very serious," she thought. Nothing else changed that day. So when the night shadows fell, Goldie went down to her shell, wondering if the new arrival would be like a friendly guppy or a cold-blooded barb. But most importantly, she thought, will he like me? The next day was exciting. Smiley Face dipped his hands in the water and let the orange and black striped fish free. He darted around the water, investigating the sides, the shell, and all the pebbles. He picked up some of the pebbles and spit them out. The pebbles gained more and more sparkle. This took a very long time, almost all day. "My name is Goldie. What's yours?" asked the inquisitive goldfish. Annoyed by the interruption, the new occupant replied, "Loach." Seeing her disappointment at such a curt answer, he expanded his response. "It's all I've ever heard anyone call me." With that, he turned back to his cleaning of the pebbles. Goldie swam to the middle of the bowl, leaving Loach to his task, while she watched the light creep across the room as it slunk into darkness. Loach finished with the gravel, now shimmering, and moved onto the shell. The sides would also sparkle before he would rest for the night. The next day, Goldie awoke to a sparkling, stunning bowl. It had never gleamed like this before. Each pebble glistened with new color and fresh light. The sides of the bowl were crystal clear, which made Smiley Face's room more defined. Goldie swam to the inside of the shell, where she found the walls smooth and sleek. "You did all this?" asked Goldie, twirling with delight. Loach was resting now, but answered matter-of-factly, "Yes, that's what I do." "This is amazing." "It's hard work, but I love a clean home." "You're staying then?" asked Goldie. "I'm fairly certain I am," answered Loach, glancing at his new accommodation. Just then, he noticed something he missed, and with a turn of his tail, he went back to his fastidious cleaning. This continued for a few days, and Goldie wondered if he might ever be as interested in her as she was in him. In the mornings, she watched and waited for recognition from Loach until Smiley Face came. Then she continued with her twirls and swirls at the sound of his voice. She was cautiously aware of Furry Monster and her movements. Furthermore, she continued to watch the sun move across the room as the shadows grew. She fell into sleep feeling lonely and sad underneath her glistening, pearly pink shell. Cautiously watching Goldie for a few days, Loach was intrigued, and now had something to say. After the shadows had filled the room and the water cooled, Loach swam down to the giant cockle shell. Peeking his head under the ripples of the shell, he interrupted Goldie dozing off to sleep. "And what do you do?" he asked softly, while wrinkling his whiskers. "Let me show you," she answered with excitement. "Tomorrow we'll get started." Goldie closed her eyes, relaxed her fins, and smiled as she drifted into sleep, ever so thankful to Smiley Face for bringing her a friend. In the morning, the lessons began. First, they watched the shadows shrink halfway across the room while waiting for Smiley Face to stir from his slumber. Loach was fascinated with how Smiley Face went from being fast asleep one minute and the next racing around the room getting ready for his day. He had been so busy cleaning that he hadn't noticed it before now. Soon, Smiley Face paused and stopped to greet his friends, watching him in the water. Goldie, as usual, began moving her pectoral fins in a figure 8, glancing at Loach, encouraging him to do the same. Smiley Face began talking to them both. "How are you today? Have you two become friends?" he asked. He began sharing with Goldie and Loach where he was going and what he was doing this day. "Aren't you a cool-looking fish?" he said rhetorically to Loach. "You kind of look like a tiger. But I'll still call you Loach because I like the way that sounds. And Goldie, you are as pretty as ever. I hope having a new friend makes you happier." Goldie began twirling in tight circles and then fanning out her fins to show them off. Loach just kept spinning his pectoral fins in a figure 8, because that is all he was able to manage. As per usual, this made Smiley Face giggle. "Don't worry, Loach, you'll get the spins down soon enough." With that, he sprinkled the first batch of fish food for the day in the bowl, then added, "Don't forget to tell him about Mouser, the cat, Goldie." And he darted out of the room. "Oh, right! I better tell you about Mouser before we get started on spins. I call her Furry Monster. She is striped with gray, white, and black fur. She has big emerald eyes, except when she watches me swim. Then they widen to black." "I don't think I've seen one of these furry monsters," Loach interrupted. "She usually sleeps on Smiley Face's bed, curled up on the sunny spots. She loves to snuggle with him when he's drawing or reading. But sometimes she decides to jump up here and stare at me closely. One time, she even had the courage to stick her furry paw in the water and bat it around. She caused big waves and I hid under the shell. She hasn't done that again, I think because she didn't like the way it felt on her paws." And with that, Goldie moved on to the circle lessons. "I better try to show you how to do the tight circles and wide circles. Watch me." Many times Goldie spun in a circle and pulled her fins in close to her body, which made her circles tight and fast. Loach tried to copy her, but his fins were short and stumpy compared to hers, and he could never gain the momentum Goldie did. However, on the wide circles around the bowl, he was a pro. Because of his streamlined body, he could outswim Goldie, even lap her a few times. This made the whirlpool even faster, and they loved riding the fast vortex to the bottom of the pebbly floor. When they were finished with warnings of Furry Monster and the spin lessons, they watched as the sun retreated from the room and the shadows grew larger. Soon, Smiley Face would return, again stopping by the bowl and telling them about his day. Before sitting on his bed to draw, he sprinkled more food in the bowl, and then entered Furry Monster. At first, she leapt onto Smiley Face's bed and began settling into the remaining warm patch of sun. After grooming her paws with her spiked tongue, she glanced up at their bowl. She was keenly interested. "Something new is moving up there," her eyes seemed to say. Loach saw her eyes follow him and turned to black. He was frozen in terror, forgetting the instructions Goldie had given him. Getting up on her haunches, Furry Monster began to creep towards the bowl. "Swim down here quick, Loach," Goldie spoke softly, as to not heighten agitation. But Loach, frozen in fear, could not move. Swimming swiftly to the surface, Goldie brushed by Loach to snap him out of his stupor. "Come with me," she exclaimed, and helped him swim to safety. Loach and Goldie huddled under the half shell, anticipating the worst. The half shell made for a good protective place. It was hard on the outside, with ridges that started on one side and fanned out to the other. On the inside, the smooth pink dome curved around them. Smiley Face interrupted the tension. No, Mouser, don't you go up there now. Goldie has a new friend and you don't need to frighten him. He smoothed the grey-striped fur on her head down to her tail, relaxing her into a purring kitten. It was over for now. Soon, Goldie and Loach fell into their routine, watching the sun climb in through the window, greeting Smiley Face, eating breakfast, cleaning the pebbles, sides and shell, making whirlpools and fanning their fins. In the evenings, they greet Smiley Face again, eat and watch the shadows grow across the room as the sun crept back outside. Drawings of a tiger-striped loach began sharing space on the walls with pictures of Goldie and Furry Monster. And as the waters cooled every evening, Goldie and Loach cuddled together under the pearly pink shell, resting until the morning. The end.